Peace and Black Power, family was goody, 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 goody. You already know it's your brother Nguvo. Now you see RANM, Garvey Cub Roman, repping for 432, RANM RBGz TV. On our way over once again, Roosevelt Public Library, right here in the hood, Roosevelt, Long Island. If you free, come through. Jumpstart that mental. This is what it's all about. Feel me? So in the meantime, between time, keep it locked right here, keep it G. Try to get some footage, try to talk to some folks, man. Keep it G right here, man. This is your brother Nguvo. I am your brother, man. Peace, love, and black power. Who talk for the all? Let's get it. Peace and Black Power, family. Once again, this is RANM RBGz TV. Your brother Nguvo. Now you see RANM. I'm standing here with my brother from out of town. State your name, introduce yourself to the people, bro.
My name is Tariq Marcus Griffith. Is Tariq Marcus Sutan on Facebook.
All right.
Sutan is my family's original name. My last name is Griffith. But you know, me talking to my dad and stuff like that, he told us that our original last name is Sutan.
Oh, that's what's up. That's what's up.
So my name on Facebook is Tariq Marcus Sutan. I think that's it. That's all I got.
All right, we out here. Like I said, this is, you know what I'm saying, we on our way to the hood, on our way to Roosevelt, waiting on this damn bus. Hopefully it comes soon enough, because it's brick city out here. But nonetheless, we about to go, like I said, jumpstart that mental, man, at the library, Roosevelt Public Library. I told y'all this is where we at. We about to jumpstart the mental with that good documentary. You feel what I'm saying? A little entry level brain food, just to get the people mind rolling, you know what I mean?
That's where I live at. I live in Brick City.
Oh, that's what it is. Dirty Jers, dirty Jers, dirty Jers. Yeah, man, like, what's on your mind? Like, what are some of the things that you want to see the black community, you know what I'm saying, strive to do, bro?
I mean, I was talking to my god brother, my cousin, stuff like yesterday. We was having a long conversation. One of the things that I think, one of the biggest things I think we need to do is learn about business and learn about our history. Once we do that, then we can, you know, everything else will fall into place.
That's what's up.
Once we learn history and what we've been doing, and once we learn business and not just, you know, being out there selling drugs and stuff like that, but once we actually learn how to move, how they move into the whole business thing, they're getting away with a lot of shit.
Right.
As far as business is concerned, because it's quote unquote legal.
Yeah.
You know, so once we learn how to work the loopholes in our favor, then, you know, and once we learn our history, because once you know yourself, can't nobody tell you nothing.
That's real.
You mean, if you know what they telling you, like if you just believe what they telling you, then they can just tell you anything. Once you know yourself for real, they can't say nothing.
That's real.
They can say whatever they want to, but you're like, but I know the truth though. And you feel me? And a lot of them know the truth about us, but they won't tell us.
That's right.
A lot of them know the truth.
Because they know the consequences going to happen once we know what it is.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They know the consequence.
No, that's exactly what it is. Once we know what's really good, it's gonna be a lot of hell to pay.
That's my man,
you feel me?
That's what it is. I think that's a bus coming. Hopefully, God willing, and Sister Willow, we getting them out this cold because it's brick. But anyway, family, stay tuned. This is RANM RBGz TV. Keep it G. Lock right here. Peace, love, and black power. You already know black love is a gift for the black nation. So let's get it. Good evening.
That's a little bit better.
All right, we want to get it started.
First of all, let me welcome all of you. It's so nice to see a nice showing tonight. My name is Carol Gilliam. I'm the Black Heritage Librarian here at Roosevelt Public Library. If many of you don't know me, please get to know me. My collection, or our collection, is in the lower level of this, of the old building.
What's up, love?
This is, of course, the new building, our Cultural Arts Center. And if you haven't been here before, you see it's beautiful state of the art. But the Roosevelt Public Library has a very stellar Black heritage collection that I've been building for many years. I work here part-time, and we have some books that no other library has. In fact, we are the third largest Black heritage collection in the state of New York. And many people don't even know that. So please come down and browse and see what we have right here in Roosevelt. So, continuing our Black History celebration, I get kind of sad because the month is so short and it's been such a horrible winter. And February is almost over, but we continue our Black History celebration throughout the whole year. Every day is Black History Month.
That's right.
Or every day is Black History, and every month is Black History Month. I'd like to invite all of you to come back On Saturday evening, which will be the culmination of our Black History celebration, we're going to have a jazz concert right here in the same room. The featured artist is Miss Rhonda Dene and her trio. She's from Jersey City, and she is a very gifted artist. In fact, she did a program here right before the Christmas holidays. She did a Motown show. So she's coming back to do a jazz show, and she always gives us a good history of our musical artists, as well as giving us a musical performance. So please come back Saturday night at 7 p.m. Spread the word. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce you to a very, very talented and knowledgeable Black man. He teaches at Nassau Community College, and if you were here for our last session 2, he facilitated, and of course session 1 he also facilitated. So this is our last segment of Hidden Colors, and Dr. Shabazz is here to facilitate us tonight, and this will be the last session of that. So let's give him a warm welcome.
Black power.
Shabazz.
Greetings, family. Peace and love.
Peace.
Yes, I rise giving praise to the Creator, our Creator, and ancestors as well, shoulders we stand upon, whose footprints we walk behind, with whose ideas we do and can certainly fly. The spirit of Imhotep Gary Bird, as he used to give us on the GBE, all the while, black in the day. And before I say any more words, it's proper in the African tradition. I see we have some youth that are here today. And anytime we gather, it's important that we always try to show them the right way and show them tradition. In the African tradition, my youth, you always give honor and respect to the elders.
That's right.
And the elders. And as a young person, even if you're young with gray hairs, you should always, before you speak before an audience, make sure it's okay with the elders that you speak your mind. And so, before I speak, I'd like to request the permission of the elder. Can one of the elders grant me permission to go forward? Give thanks, Baba. Yes, I give thanks. Yes, I. So I say Hotep. Hotep means peace, and it means peace. And are you satisfied, or I am satisfied? In the ancient Nile Valley language that we know and we receive as hieroglyph or hieroglyphics.
Youngins coming, yes.
Yes, I'm grateful at the opportunity to come and share with you tonight, as we've had in previous nights. And you know, it's a wonderful documentary that we have that we're viewing here, and it's so great to see the audience and the chairs filling up this evening to receive it. It's Hidden Colors Part 3. And how many people have seen Part 3 of Hidden Colors? Just a few, very good. And if you've seen 1 and 2, you know that 1 and 2 really laid a strong foundation, lay a strong foundation to give you a clear, give all of us a clear awareness of who we are as African people, going way back to the origins of the human. And Part 3 of Hidden Colors is mostly focusing on looking at solutions to our problems, our present day problems. Last time that we showed Hidden Colors 2 strongs ago, or 2 weeks ago, 14 days ago, a fortnight ago. You know, we had a little glitch on the part that was dealing with spirituality. And, you know, but before we viewed the film last time, you know, we gave a few words of critique about, you know, the real nature of our African origins. And, you know, we talked about the whole question of Darwinism and social Darwinism, and the idea that we evolved out of the primate. And, you know, as we talked about that, I mentioned that in the 20th century, that they kind of established that whole field of anthropology and archaeology based upon a hoax. And that hoax was known as Piltdown Man. Piltdown Man. You've heard of Piltdown Man? Piltdown Man was a hoax that they created in England. And from 1912 to 1953, you know, the field of archaeology was established on the idea that Piltdown Man was the missing link. Don't worry about the board, Mark. That's really just for me to remind myself. But Piltdown Man was the idea of the missing link. They tried to say that the missing link was found in England. You know, they didn't want to give the idea that the African could be the origin of humanity and the origin of all the other humans. And so they tried to say that the missing link was found in England from 1912 to 1953. That's a whole two generations. You know, they established archaeology on the idea of Piltdown Man. And then one day in 1950s, they were examining this skull. Piltdown Man was based upon a skull that was supposed to be a human head, a human top skull, and a primate jaw. And under close examination in the 1950s, one of the scientists said, "Wow, this is a fabrication."
Oh my God,
and they
no
discovered
bad.
that the jaw had been glued to the skull. Now, for me, right there, that throws away the whole field for me, and I can't really trust. For me, I can't really trust any skeletal remain that they find anymore.
I know that's right.
Because I see for 40 years they built the whole field on a hoax. It was very convenient right after they found that Piltdown Man was a hoax. And L.S.B. Leakey, of course, he established the Tanzanian Olduvai Gorge roots of the whole African prehistoric origins to humanity. And then they reestablished the whole Darwinism, social Darwinism phenomenon. I don't want to really go into that tonight. But what I do want to touch on to a touch, and just to a degree, is, you know, in terms of our spirituality, what is the African's contribution to this whole spiritual awareness? And in truth, once you really begin to study our culture from our own linguistic perspective, it blows the field on the white man's perspective of our origins. If you would read what the oldest deciphered human literature says, I'm gonna write that on the board so you can write and think about what this idea means when you say the oldest deciphered human literature, the oldest deciphered human writing. That means that, where do you find this writing? This is found in the Nile Valley of Africa, Africa's Nile Valley. And in that Africa's Nile Valley, you have humanity's oldest deciphered literature. They have older literature, but the older literature has yet to be deciphered. And the older literature that they find that older literature further into the inner recesses of Africa. In Sudan, in Ethiopia, they have the Meroitic scripts that have yet to be translated. Maybe one of these children will break the code and translate it one day, because, you know, to tell you the truth, the Egyptologists, they're not trying to translate any more text from our culture, because everything that they translate
goes right back to
reveals
us.
more and more who we really are.
That's right.
Okay? I'm just going to give you a peek into what you already know. If you just think about what you know about language, the word that is given for this Nile Valley language, you already know it. What's the name that's given for this Nile Valley language? It's called?
They call it hieroglyphics.
Called hieroglyph. It's called hieroglyph. This is, however, what the Greeks called it. This is what the Greeks called it.
That's right.
But the Greeks of antiquity, they were not like the racist whites today. The Greeks of antiquity, they worshipped the people of the Nile Valley.
Yes, they did.
They worshipped the Ethiopians. They worshipped the Egyptians.
Yes, they did.
They shaved their heads and went to the temples of Egypt and studied for 30, 40 years
Yes, they did.
to get some knowledge. Because they came from, in their own heritage, in their own historical claims, they came from a barbaric people, a savage people.
That's right.
And so when you study Plato and Socrates, when they returned to Greece with this philosophy, they were outlaws in Greece. They had to beg people to come and listen to them. And when you find out and check where Socrates, you know, Socrates died in prison. And he was in prison for teaching foreign philosophy, foreign teachings. And he was not teaching Greek philosophy.
That's right.
Whose philosophy was he teaching?
African philosophy.
Teaching African philosophy.
That's right.
Nile Valley, Ethiopian, Egyptian, Kushite, Kemite philosophy. So they called the Greeks, though, when Alexander the so-called Great conquered the Nile Valley in 332 BCE, you know, they had the whole systems translated into their language. And so they called the writing system of the ancient Africans, they called the writing hieroglyph. And they called the land Egypt. This is all Greek, however. This is all Greek. Egypt, hieroglyph, these are Greek terms that the Africans that lived in this land, you already know, they didn't call the land Egypt, they called their land, somebody knows it, they called it Kemet, you know that, excellent.
That's right.
The black land, the black people's land, or the black people's country. Sometimes they try to say it means the black earth. And it makes reference to the earth, but if you can read the hieroglyphs, you can see that there's some determinatives that really state that they're not really talking about the earth. They're talking about a people's country.
That's right.
All right? And so the hieroglyph, this is the Greek translation. And like I said, the Greeks were not racist. They tried to really learn the culture in an intricate and as clear as they could. And so when you look at the word hieroglyph, hiero means sacred, and glyph means to carve. And so the Greeks called the writings of the ancient Africans sacred carvings. If something is sacred, it comes from God. Things that are sacred come from the divine. And so the Greeks called the Africans writing, which is found everywhere when you go to them ancient relics of the Nile Valley. Them was like graffiti writers of the 1970s in New York City. You remember the subways in New York City? In the 1970s, man, them subway cars, it was like graffiti everywhere. You gotta look at one of them old time movies, young people. Listen, I don't know how it was Koch or Beam, that city was out of control. Graffiti ran the show. And that's how it was in the Nile Valley. The writing is everywhere, but the writing was not a vanity writing.
That's right.
Wasn't me all over the place. The writing was divine principles.
That's right.
And concepts to remind a people who they must have predicted would forget.
That's right.
To remind the people that they must have known would forget of their divine and sacred essence. And so hieroglyph means sacred carving. And the word for Egypt is properly Kemet. But the translation of the word hieroglyph into the word that the Kemites use for their language is very interesting, because usually people speak a language based upon where they come from. The geography where they come from. Isn't that right? And so usually people who come from France, what language they speak?
They speak French.
People come from Spain, they speak. People come from Portugal, they speak. People come from England, they speak. You get the idea. And so following that logic, the people of Kemet, they should have spoke Kemetian, right? Is that what you're saying? They should have spoke Kemetian, but they didn't call their language Kemetian. They called their language based upon the concept of their origin.
That's right.
And so they called their language not Kemetic or Kemetian, they called their language Medu Neter.
That's right.
Medu Neter.
Language of the gods.
Medu means words, language,
That's right.
speech. Words, language, speech. And hold your seat. Hold your seat so you can see what's in your DNA and remember who you are. That the word Neter means God.
That's right.
Our ancient ancestors of the Nile Valley they didn't create writing, they gave us the oldest deciphered writing. There's writing older than that, but it is yet to be deciphered. They called their language God's language, God's speech, God's words. Last time I was here, I was talking about how our young people take those that concept of God, and they switched it around, young people. They don't call each other gods. They say, yo, God. They say, yo, God.
Nope.
I hear Roosevelt say, yo, God, where's my gods at? No, they switched them letters around. They call each other what? Dogs. It's not Public Enemy. Public Enemy switched that script down here. That was West Coast business. Public Enemy, Roosevelt, big up. Foundation, hip-hop, consciousness. You know what I mean? For real. But the idea of our ancients recognizing our sacredness, our divinity. And from this ancient Nile Valley legacy really come the roots for all of the ancient theologies and spiritual traditions. From Hebrew culture to Christianity to Islam. They all really build upon the basic spiritual and sacred principles that you can read for yourself. If you could read the hieroglyphs, you could read it for yourself, but you don't even have to read the hieroglyphs because the 20th century we've produced some of the greatest black scholars that have translated these things into text for us to be awakened in ourselves and create the proper schools so that our children can grow up from youthfulness all the way up through adulthood, knowing that they ain't no N-word, that they not the D-word, but we are the sacred and divine people of the earth. And so this is to a large degree what Hidden Colors Part 3 is really designed to make us aware of what our present mission is as a people. How do you take all of this legacy that is produced in Part 1 and Part 2, and how do you make it meaningful in the lives of a people? Queen Mother talked about this being Black Heritage Month. I taught about 3 classes this strong this week at the college. We're returning from a midwinter break, so we get a break off. We get a week off without curriculum even during Black Heritage Month. But lo and behold, my sadness and my shame was that when I queried my students regarding the reading assignments that I gave them, Message to the Grassroots, Malcolm X, Racism and the White Backlash, Dr. Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, from the narrative of Frederick Douglass, the poetry of Phyllis Wheatley. This is what I asked them to read over the break. And when I queried my class and questioned who was ready to summarize any of those readings, you know, my heart breaks that people who don't even come from that cultural legacy were more prepared to reason and talk with me about those topics. Our students, I don't know what was on TV. I don't watch TV no more. I don't know what's on this. I don't know what was more interesting than the narrative of Frederick Douglass. I don't know what is more dramatic than the narrative of Olada and Olana. I don't know what is more complex than the poetry of Phyllis Wheatley, who begins a poem. I'm going to say a poem and then we're going to go to the video. She begins a poem saying, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God and a Savior too. Once I redemption neither sought nor knew." The beginning of the poem makes it sound like she's happy to have been brought to Americas as a slave. You hear her? She says, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land."
She speaks sarcastically.
Oh, she was kidnapped at 7 years old and raised in Boston, and her whole life was to be designed to dispel the concept that blacks could not be taught to read and write. So our masters taught her how to read and write, gave her a library that was full of the ancient Western classics, which means that she was well educated in the science of the Greeks and the knowledge of the Greeks. She knew where the Greeks got their enlightenment. Yet she begins her poem by saying, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land," as if Africa was a land of pagans. Yet she grew up with that library. Wait, something's not right here. Many people throw Phyllis Wheatley away for that. Listen to the last part of her poem, though. She says, I gotta go from the beginning. She says, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God and a Savior too. Once I redemption neither sought nor knew. She says once African people never sought that spiritual redemption. She's masking though. She's masking for an audience that is a European audience. Black people ain't reading English when she's writing poetry. If she's going to write another book of poetry, if she's going to write another poem and not be shipped to Mississippi to cut some cotton, pick some cotton, she better write the right type of poetry. She better say it was mercy brought me from my pagan land. And if she wants to say something of enlightenment to awaken a people that will read this stuff later, she's going to have to slip it in some kind of subtle way. They called it on the plantation back then, they called it masking. You know, masking is what y'all do when y'all go to the job. You know, that's what y'all do. Y'all go to the job, that's what y'all mask. I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, tenured professor. We don't mask at the job. I'm called on a mission to really reveal this to everybody, anybody that'll listen. Any captive audience. That's right. Will listen. We don't change my language or my expression. We call the place shit society is Babylon. It's a Rastaman, you know. That's right. Fire! Fire burn the shit society. That's yes. Right. Spirit of Peter Tosh. That's right. All right? But what am I talking about? What was it? Phyllis Wheatley. She says, in the end of the poem, she says, some view our sable race with scornful eye. Some people view black people with a scornful eye. Back in 18th century when she wrote this, as well as now. She says, some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolical dye. Remember, Christians, that's who she's writing for. Remember, Christians, Negroes black as Cain may be refined and join the angelic train. What is she saying in that last part of the poem? I taught at Black History Month at a church in the Bronx a few years ago, and I talked about that quote in the poem, and the minister told me that Cain got cursed black when he killed his brother Abel, as if he was originally white. I said, this man never read the autobiography of Malcolm X and the Laws of Mendel that teach that if white people were here first, there would be no other people here. It's the black people that have the independent DNA to produce all the peoples in the earth. And through mutation, some of us have albinos within our families. That's genetic mutation. We have all of the genetic coding within the black man's testicles, according to Francis Cress Wilson. All right? But remember, Christians, Negroes black as Cain. Phyllis Wheatley's revealing that if Cain is black, who are the parents of Cain? You tell me, Christians, parents of Cain were Adam and Eve. And so if Adam and Eve were black, what does that say about God? Adam is created in the image and likeness of? Oh, Phyllis Wheatley, she says, 'twas mercy brought me from my pagan land. But at the end of the poem, she's revealing a real awareness in the 18th century that in the 21st century we have forgotten. We are sacred people. We need to teach our youth their divine heritage. And it's not something just to walk in a divine heritage in your mind, but you got to kind of walk and create the divine heritage in the institutions in the earth. That's right. We got to really come out of the white man's thinking in regard to how we see ourselves. We need to really come out of the white man's cultural values, the me orientation, yes, instead of the we orientation. Yeah. We watch Kunta Kinte and Roots today, and when Kunta Kinte was getting ready to run away, Fiddler was like, what's it going to be for me? What's going to happen to me? You know what's going to happen to me, Fiddler? Kunta Kinte says, come with Kunta then. You want me to stay with you? He has communal values, but all Fiddler's thinking about is me. We got a lot of fiddlers today. We got a lot of fiddlers today. That's right. This is the point. This is the point. So it's more to this thing than just knowing a lot of facts. There's more to being a divine person and a sacred person than just praying and being a monk. But the real blessing of our legacy right now as black people is that we have the opportunity to bring the kingdom right here on earth.
That's right.
And all we have to do is really love each other and work with each other and take whatever little pennies that we can get from their society and pool them and begin to work our little resources right here in Roosevelt. A little town like this, a lot of potential right here if you work together in unity.
I know that's right.
I think the first thing, though, we have to really commit to creating our own school system.
Yes.
As small as it may be, that's be a little bit of hope that we can bring to the future, because I teach them children when they come from Roosevelt High School and Hempstead High School and Uniondale High School. We're functionally illiterate. We don't even have good video literacy. I gotta explain stuff that we're seeing on the camera, on the video even. All right? And so not to try to beat us down from where we're at, but we gotta give a serious reality check of where our neglect in our own educational institutions have left us in the 21st century. We worked from the 1950s all the way through to integrate their educational system, and it's produced
nothing.
A backward student when they come to college today. We need to really rethink our social agenda in terms of education and our own independent black educational system. I thank you for the time and attention for this introduction, and right now I think we're ready to run the tape. After I want to introduce our convener, Brother Wilton Robinson, at this time. Give thanks.
Black power.
I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Shabazz for taking out his time and his schedule to come and talk with us for the third time. This was a series that the staff and I thought that should be brought to the public and to the Roosevelt community for Black History Month. I went around to other libraries and to other different organizations that had Black history programs, and believe me, it's a shame. We have been taught not the right way on how our history has been taught to us and been brought to us. It's a shame that propaganda has been taken over by a lot of the fascists in the community. So I wanted to recognize Miss Gooseby is in Albany, from what I understand, and she wanted to recognize Dr. Shabazz with this certificate of congratulations to his series for Black History Month.
Black Power.
I wanted to recognize him.
Black Power. Utuabo.
And I wanted to thank Miss Gilliam back there, who helped put some of this together. And also, she has a program that's going to be Saturday. You already told her that? Okay. Please come out. We have been lacking in programming in the last couple of years, and we want to bring that back. And so we hope that all of you will come back and enjoy some of the things that we're putting out. Please come down to our circulation desk downstairs. The ladies will help you whatever programming with books and videos or whatever you need from this library, and we hope that you come out to support us as much as you possibly can. So thank you again for coming, and Dr. Shabazz, I want to thank you so much for having your talents and your efforts to come out and talk with us for the third time.
All right.
So, run the tape.
Let's get it.
So the narrative of black people in the United States was, you know, you came from these primitive, savage people who had no history, and everything you are, we made you.
Strip the African of his knowledge of himself. You can then replace that knowledge with any falsification of consciousness you desire. Once you take from me my knowledge of myself, you can then tell me those lies.
Racism is what we are all living and breathing 24/7. There's never a moment, a second, a minute, an hour, a day, a year for the past 500 years when race has not been the dominant reality.
America has done all of these terrible things to black people, and then they complain when we do it to ourselves. We're mirroring what they have always done to us since we got off those boats.
It's easy to sit up somewhere and talk with black people about black people, but it's not so easy to have to sit up and look at white people's face and talk to them about white people. Now that's what I know.
43 million black people, I think that probably 10% of our community at this moment in time would have a real consciousness about their ancient and modern history. That 90% of us don't have a clue of who we really are.
My mom used to say, you darker, work harder. The darker you are, the harder you have to work, the smarter you have to be.
Folks were breastfed on racism. Breastfed them.
If you're talking about a problem in the world and you're not dealing with white supremacy, you ain't talking about the problem.
There's never been a real dialogue in America about race, because whenever we start to talk about race, the conversation will venture into, well, what's wrong with black people?
White people did whatever they wanted to do to black people.
Still do.
You know, so what are the rules?
People are suffering more now than they did under both George Bush and Bill Clinton. Our unemployment rate is higher. Our incarceration rate is higher. Every index of so-called progress for blacks is worse under Obama than the 2-3 previous presidents. You always put a black face in office when you're about to take things back from black people.
Let's be clear. I'm not suggesting that black people don't hate white people. There are plenty of black people that go, I hate you. I hate you. I call your names, get pictures of white people, throw darts at them. But you still get the loan. So the fact that black people don't like white people doesn't mean they have the power to affect them as an entire group.
See, white ain't a color, it's an attitude. And you got to have big bucks to be an attitude. But here's what they didn't hire. They said, if you have 1 32nd Negro blood, you're a Negro. Now think about what they just told you. This is a cat who don't like me. He said, if you have 1 32nd Negro blood, you know what that really means? In order to equal 1 Dick Gregory, you got to put 32 white boys next to me. Are you crazy?
Black people look at racism as a moral issue. And when you look at racism as a moral issue, especially for black people, you automatically relegate racism to the realm of religion. That's a problem, because now the solution to racism becomes baptizing or Islamicizing white people into the righteousness of God and equality. And the problem with that is that the church and the mosque, ironically, have been some of the biggest perpetrators of history, of racism in global history. The Roman Catholic Church was one of the first institutions to actually give permission, okay, for African people to, quote unquote, be reduced to servitude.
To get someone to actually think that someone else is inferior, you have to raise that type of mentality to a religious level. And that's why racism essentially was given its validation through the church. And it is the church that
gave it a divine presence in order to say that whatever atrocities you commit in the name of the church is justified because these people did something against God that warrants their punishment and their social status.
What makes it so hard to fight it is because it's invisible. When you go to court and you sue for discrimination, when you go to court and you sue for racial prejudice, I didn't get hired because I was black. I was kicked out of school because I was black. You have to prove racist intent on part of the perpetrator. So racism, as white supremacy's chief weapon, is difficult to combat it because you have to prove that the person who committed the act of racism had the deliberate intent of discriminating against you because of color. And because we are all humans, nobody's perfect. So there's a million reasons they can use as an excuse for why you didn't get hired. He didn't have enough experience, but you really didn't get hired because you were black. There's a million reasons they can use why you didn't get hired. He was overqualified. Now look at that. You're talking about some reverse racism. You told me I couldn't get the job because I didn't have a college degree. I came back with a master's. Now you're telling me I'm overqualified. So now before I didn't get the job because I didn't have enough education, now I don't get the job because I got too much. So the problem with racism is that it can hide behind everyday human errors that all of us have.
They called him Black Joe Hodges. Many African American people had a less volatile relationship with the Native Americans. A lot of the European settlers, they were beefing with the Native Americans. So they couldn't go into certain areas peacefully, but a lot of African American settlers would go in there. They had somewhat of a camaraderie with the Native American people. In Los Angeles, 44 African American families came to Los Angeles and founded Los Angeles. The governor of what was then known as Alta, California, which is now the state of California, the governor was a man of African descent named Pio Pico. And there's a street out here in Los Angeles called Pico Boulevard named after him. You had an African American woman named Biddy Mason, who was a very wealthy landowner in early Los Angeles. So African American people were very prominent in founding many cities around America.
Chicago was a city founded by Jean-Baptiste Pointe-du-Sable, a brother of Haitian background coming up through and founding this city at Chicago, because that is what the indigenous people called it in this part of Illinois. Now, Seneca Village really is a misnomer for Senegal Village. Seneca Village was a community in New York City that was purchased by freed Africans when the enslavement of African people was abolished in 1827. Senegal Village became a meeting place for African people in general. The backstory, it is believed that Senegal Village became part of the Underground Railroad for African peoples. Starting in 1855, you're going to have people start to call it a shanty town, where people who are squatters live. They're going to demean the importance of Senegal Village. They're going to say, you see all these African people moving up in here, and they're squatters, they don't belong there, and we need to create a park. And so they begin to put themselves upon the people. Finally, the mayor signs an edict saying, eminent domain, you got to get out. And so by 1857, the last Africans were forcibly removed from their homes.
What's interesting about Central Park, it was once an African American community, Seneca Village, and now there's an ancient African monument. There's an obelisk in Central Park right now that's from ancient Africa, from ancient Kemet, and a lot of people don't even realize it's there.
A lot of people think that the enslavement of African people was only down south. That's not true. The largest plantation in the 13 colonies at one point in history was in Brooklyn, New York. Wow. And you know that area down there, down by Battery Park, where they used to bring the ships into that area, the port. And they would dock the ships, and they would bring the Africans up out the ships, and they would walk them across to be sold. However, what they did was, because they couldn't sell all of them, they used to put them in different prisons along this particular path. And then they would march the Africans that they were ready to sell down the street called Wall Street, down into a place we today call the New York Stock Exchange. African people were the first stocks and bonds sold on the stock exchange. There's a movie by Bruce Willis that will show you the prisons that are underground, the stock exchange building.
Oh no, he's a good man. He's the best man there is. Well, that sound is not in the airwaves, because ain't nobody saying that. You know, if we started taking that position, all things would change for you.
The image of the black woman has consistently been complicated. So, you know, you get the mammy image, right? And that mammy image was one, you know, the kind of Aunt Jemima. The mammy image, coming from slave days, was one who was really good to massa, but knew how to control her own people, particularly knew how to control the man in the slave community. And so where she's like all huggy, snuggly with the white child and yes, whatever you need. When she was back in the slave cabin, she's domineering.
You have the concept of the African woman as the Jezebel. She's free with herself. And then you have the mammy complex, where you have the heavier set woman. Neither one of them is wrong, neither one of them is bad. That might just be their attitude. But they could be good, solid people. But in order to assuage your conscience, in order to make you feel better about yourself as to why you raped her or why you beat her or why you treat her the way you do, you say, well, she ain't nothing anyway. So that's how I'm going to make myself feel better while I mistreat her.
Their sex is promiscuous, right? And how do you know? Well, this is literally out of a medical journal. Their protruding buttocks and genitals were offered as evidence of their pathology of lust.
Because they had big butts. We accept you as you are, exactly, and you are beautiful to us in that way. But we don't believe that because of outside interference. And so they've given us this artificiality as a concept of what beauty is. And so we want to have all these other things, which are still mimicking white women.
We have seen hot combs in Egypt. African women did use hot combs on their hair. But they did not have a woman of European descent who they were emulating to look like that.
6% of America's population. 98% of fibroids in America. Black women. The next highest group, Jewish women. What they got in common? Nappy hair. How come my mother never heard of fibroids? How come they didn't get fibroids? You can't catch it. It ain't a disease. How we getting perms? When we start using perms, those chemicals go through my skull. That's how I get fibroids.
Creamy crack.
Now, fortunately, there is a trend out there where black sisters are coming back natural a little bit. Now, part of that was voluntary, and the other part is that those perms have burned up and messed their hair up a lot. They're having to go natural now. And the other thing is that wearing those tight braids on the side of their head has pulled out spots around their hair. Some of them, the hairline starting back there, you know, because of the braids being so tight. We're not in the African sun. It's not creating the same type of oils on our scalp as here in the hills of North America, where you have 4 different seasons and terrible weather. And so that hasn't worked on our hair, even though, you know, and some of that hair is made from raccoons, horses, hyenas. It's made from anything, and they put it together, ship it over here, and sell it to us.
I was getting a doll for one of my daughters. There was a white mother and a white girl, little girl, in the doll section. And the mother said, you can have any doll you want. I saw, you know, I just watched the little girl. She was walking around, and I was looking at dolls, too, and I was looking to see which one. And all of a sudden, the little girl took a brown doll, a black doll. And the mother said to her, why do you want that doll? She said, because it's pretty. She said, no, it ain't pretty. And not only that, it don't look like you. That's what a white mother told a white child. It don't look like you, and it's not a pretty doll. What happens to the black child when that young white girl meets that black child? What's been ingrained in that little girl's head? See, the adults are the problem.
We have more power as black women than we will ever understand that we have. And so they come to the people with the power when they want to control a group or a nationality.
Teach a child that you are beautiful. I had a little girl say to me, my nose is too big. I said, well, can you breathe? She said, yeah, I can breathe. I said, well, your nose is just right.
When they make baby food, they really make it for the mother, because the mother's not going to get a baby nothing that she don't like. So baby ain't never had sugar, salt, pepper, chemicals. So So the baby is sitting in your lap and you feeding it, and they see that white baby on there. You don't see it. They see it. And every time she puts in there, a good feeling run through their body. Now they got tests that you can flash a white child, and a good feeling run through your body even after you've grown.
Slave mistress, she didn't allow black women to nurse her baby because she didn't produce milk, because nature will produce milk in a woman's breast if she has a child. So they had their own breast milk, but it was not the same nutrients as that black breast milk. And that's why they put their babies to our breasts, so that we could give them all the nutrients and put all of those vitamins and everything into that child that they needed so it would grow up strong and healthy like our babies were.
Was a law that said that if you killed someone black as a result of correcting them, but it would not be considered a felony, but anyone accused, so giving that punishment would be basically free of any punishment or any wrongdoing, called the Casual Killing Act. Stay with me. That means you are beating people to death, essentially. What we're talking about here is folks that were beating people to death to such a degree that you had to create a law to protect you from it. Now then, of course, if one looks closely, we go, who then were they trying to protect that was beating someone to death so frequently that you needed a law to protect them? And that would be white women who were beating black children to death.
Today's police.
Because, well, whose children were they really?
All right. So this is once again RANM RBGz TV. Once again, I appreciate you for tuning in. Once again, I'm here at the library in Roosevelt. The family is in there watching right now. Currently, the Hidden Gullahs Part 3, The Rules of Racism DVD documentary. Y'all can hear it in the background there, and they're getting it in. So, like I said, it's a good turnout. Not for nothing. I told you guys last time, due to the weather, whatever. Hey, how you doing, sister? Due to the weather, whatever. A lot of folks didn't really come out, whatever. But not for nothing, the weather was kind of clear, even though it's still cold. But the family is in there. I mean, there's a lot of youth in there. There's a lot of elders in there. There's a lot of young adults in there. So, like I said, man, we about to jumpstart the mentality of the hood. You feel what I'm saying? So, like I said, the more and more the folks tune in and gain that awareness or whatever, the more folks we could reach within our own realms, within our own hood, within our own block. This is what it's about. You feel me? So in the meantime, like I said, keep it G, keep it locked right here. This is RANM RBGz TV. You already know, man, black love is a cure for the black nation, so let's get it. Stay tuned. Peace.
Months, they will learn racism, white supremacy, because they're seeing white. There may be a black image. Hopefully one that's constructive, but many times not. So the culture is teaching itself 24/7, as all cultures do.
Body parts. They've been selling body parts. That's old. That's not new. That's why black people don't like to go to hospitals. They go to get their toes clipped, their fingernails clipped, and they wake up and their foot's gone.
They've been utilizing the organs of black people for years, the organs and the body parts and the members of African American people, and that goes back to George Washington. There's a long time myth that George Washington had wooden teeth. We've heard that myth growing up in school. The reality is George Washington did not have wooden teeth, because common sense will tell you you can't put wood in your mouth, it gets wet, and wet wood is useless. What George Washington did, he had the teeth of his African slaves yanked out of their mouths, and he made dentures out of these teeth. And they're on display. His dentures are on display in museums right now. And that just goes to show the history of African people having our bodies mutilated and our members disfigured and mutilated for the betterment and benefit of the dominant society.
In America, at least 2,500 black people go missing every year. At least. Never to be found again, not killed enough, you just don't find them again. Why doesn't that number ever go down? How can you constantly have the same amount of people? Are you trying to say the same killers go out and murder the same amount of people every year? No. Somebody is taking black people off the street. There's been stories on this. Kidnapped by the government. Kidnapped by organ traffickers.
Drive-by shootings is organ stealing.
I'm worth $50 million and I need a kidney. And you know, kidneys are pretty sensitive. You got to find somebody who really got the kidney that matches yours. You think I'm going to wait till somebody die for me to get one? If I don't get one soon, I'm going to die. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to pay somebody to go research people. Okay, let's go look at all the black organ donors. Let's look at all the black people who got organ donor on their driver's license, which is why I'm not a friend of that. I said, if you want to donate your organs, put it in your will. Say that if I die, this can go to my family, my relatives, my friends, or whomever. But when you put it on your license, I believe you make yourself a public target. And so what did they find? We got a guy in Los Angeles. He has the same blood type as you, same kidney type as you likely. He healthy though, he ain't likely to die no time soon. He don't know you, so he ain't gonna give you no organ for free. So guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna arrange a murder that makes it look like he was in a car accident. We're gonna arrange a murder that makes it look like he committed suicide. So the next thing you know, you coming out the gas station, boom, you get hit by a Mack truck, you dead, gone. You get taken to the funeral home, your family come to the funeral, they don't know that before your body got laid to rest, a little hole was poked and they pulled your kidney out.
A lot of people don't know, when you get arrested or even when you get convicted, a lot of times law enforcement or police will swab your mouth for DNA. And now they have your DNA record on file, they have your genetic information on file. And you have to understand, with law enforcement, a lot of times they'll sell your information to tabloids and, like, especially celebrities, they sell their information to tabloids and magazines and news outlets all the time. So it's not a stretch to believe that they won't use your DNA or your genetic information for nefarious reasons.
You, my son, cops come by and inform me you just been shot dead. You don't have jurisdiction over that body. That's the coroner. You can't get that body until the coroner release you. So we'll get released, we go down and pick it up, and I see all these cuts and these stitches. I just thought they was doing a routine investigation following the fact. I didn't know they took your organs.
We were beat into submission, and the person that we looked up to was the slave master. So what you have to understand, a lot of black people in America look at themselves through the eyes of the slave master. We feel the same way that they feel about us. We want the same thing.
There have always been laws that would pit African-American people against other African-American people. During slavery, they had a law called the Meritorious Manumission Law, where African people would get rewarded for turning in another African slave or turning in a person who wanted to create some type of rebellion or runaway slave. So there were all types of incentives to give African-American people for turning on each other.
I mean, all of our major organizations are supported by people who classify themselves as white. So it becomes difficult to bite the hand that feeds you.
Give the illusion of inclusion. And under the illusion of inclusion, we're actually going to take them back to Jim Crow. That's what they're doing. They're taking us back as they give us the propaganda of going forward, and they do this through the who? Black bourgeoisie. Every city got a black bourgeoisie. This is how white supremacy operates. A numerical minority cannot control a numerical majority without participation from the majority. It's impossible.
A lot of black secret societies are secret to the black community because you're not secret to the dominant society, because if you're a black secret society or a black organization, either you're going to be funded by the dominant society or you're going to be infiltrated by the dominant society. So a lot of these black organizations are secret to black people.
If you look at most uber rich black people, I'm not talking about the rappers, because, I mean, that's not moving the financial scope. But I'm talking about the black people that really are making money, especially the men. You don't see anything cultural about them. You usually don't see no beard. You usually don't see no long hair. They're not threatening at all. You never see them stand for anything. And a few of them may stand when all of the black people are standing so they won't look bad. Like they'll jump on the Trayvon bandwagon and throw a hoodie on and, you know, take a pose for the camera. They're not really gonna move the pose. And that's what I keep telling people. You know, a lot of black people who are doing very well for themselves, who benefited off the system being the way that it is, why would they change it?
A lot of the black secret societies, they were started because many of the people were the mulatto offspring of slave masters. As a matter of fact, in South Carolina, there was a group called the Brown Fellowship Society, and they were basically freed Africans who were the offspring of the slave masters, and they didn't want to identify themselves with black, and they couldn't be accepted by the dominant society, so they called themselves brown. They settled on that. And there was a major uprising that was going to happen in South Carolina, the RANM RBGz resurrection. And there were members of this organization called the Brown Fellowship Society that told on the RANM RBGz rebellion leaders.
Money is an anesthetic. It kind of dulled the pain a little bit. You know, well, maybe I can make it. Well, it ain't so bad. You know, well, there's some good ones out there. I mean, you know, we come up with a whole new scenario rap to talk about once we get really, really big successful.
Went from formal enslavement, emancipation, and so black people thought they were free. And then what happened? The black codes were instituted. In other words, if the black people had just, you're free from enslavement and now just spread out in the population and nobody's focusing on color, white would have disappeared. We wouldn't have a white population in America. So the black people had to be put again under control with the black codes, and of all the black people, the black men in particular.
All of a sudden you got 4 million free people. And the southern plantation owners are sitting there looking like, who's gonna work my land? Who's gonna build these bridges? Because the war was fought in the South. Bridges destroyed, train tracks ripped to shreds. The economy can't move. You know, you begin to think about if you don't have these kinds of arteries that can move goods and products from point A to point B, if you can't get stuff from the port into the interior. So part of what they come up with, they being the state legislatures in Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, are the black codes.
There was a congressional statute that was passed right after the end of slavery to deliberately control the black population. They wanted to keep the population at zero growth. Since the end of American slavery, there has been a deliberate plan to try to reduce and eliminate the population of Africans that come in this country. That's precisely why when immigrants escape from Cuba and Haiti to come to America, the Cubans are allowed in and the Haitians are sent back. See, the problem with us is they don't know what to do with us. You can't send us nowhere else. Anybody else can be sent home. They say, why they let the Chinese come in here and buy up the country? Because when they get tired of them, they can send them back. Okay? They get tired of the East Indian, they can send them back. They get tired of the Mexican, they can send them back. But the Africans, you built this. You are the only non-European in this country who has more of a right to be here than he does. So you just can't say, well, we sending all y'all back to Africa. You can't. Because we're the original American as well. So since we can't get rid of you that way, we got to come up with other more clever strategies to reduce your numbers and control you.
If you're an older black person, you'll remember when you were a kid, your parents would always tell you to get home before the street light came. That was a rule in the black community for years. That rule came from the sundown rule. That was like this unwritten policy for a long time in America where black people were not allowed to go to certain cities around the country or be in certain towns after 6 o'clock. When the street light came on, black people had to be out of these cities or you could get lynched, killed, arrested, or whatever. There's a great book about this called Sundown Towns by a guy named James Lowen. He talks about all of these cities around America that had these unwritten sundown laws, and they literally had signs saying that black people don't let the sun get down on you here in this city. And this was all over the country, not just in the South. A lot of people think that the South just had all of these racist laws, and a lot of these sundown cities were in the North.
Black folk don't act right in the summertime. It's just that black folk come to their senses when it's warm. Because if that were true, Los Angeles would always be in an uproar. What happens is when you're in a warm climate in New York City, those memories are reinvigorated. Those ideas come together. You visit your family more often. You eat the fruits that you used to eat back home. You start to think. And when people try to dominate you, you start saying, wait a minute, no. Psychologically, we go back to ourselves when we're in the climate that we like. It was going to be on a boat. It was going to be on a barge. This wasn't long ago. And, people said, no, you can't do that. But putting them on the barge was the idea of just keeping them out in the waters.
There's always been this psychological effect of being incarcerated by water. Even on slave ships, there was a psychological effect being on a slave ship incarcerated in chains and on water, being surrounded by water, because the water itself becomes a prison. So when you're incarcerated around water, there's this sense of hopelessness. This is why a lot of prominent prisons are built near water. You had like Alcatraz, you have places like Pelican Bay in California, which is near water. You have Rikers Island in New York, that's near water. So there's always been this psychological effect of enslaving or locking up or imprisoning African people around water.
Black business people were forced out of their businesses, had their businesses taken from them, not allowed to even have a business to begin with. That fight is extremely hard. That fight is so hard, it's exhausting.
In terms of racial violence, both in the South and the North, the most common instances of racial violence before we get to really the mid-20th century, where we see a lot more police activity as the site for urban rebellions and clashes, racial clashes on the streets, was enterprising, economically successful black folks on the move. Those were the ones who were most likely to face the threat of racial violence or be victims of it, because it was exactly their success that posed the ultimate threat to white supremacy.
When that white skin, you have the complexion for the protection for the collection.
That's right.
One of the things with lynching is that when black folks don't know their place, it means black folks are prosperous. Black folks aren't supposed to be prosperous. If you're prosperous, I mean, this is what, Ida B. Wells, when they lynched her friend who ran that successful grocery store in Memphis. How can you be a successful businessman? How can you be more successful than me?
And by the way, at the time of his death, Marcus Garvey was planning a black bank, because he knew if we were going to have an economic insurrection, we're going to have to be able to give black people the wealth they need to start their businesses.
During Reconstruction, they had something called the Freedmen's Bank, and a lot of African American people would put their earnings and their savings in this bank, and what happened is that the Freedmen's Bank just took everybody's money in many cases. They took a lot of African American people's money, and a lot of people were homeless and destitute. So a lot of African American people got into the habit of just spending their money very quickly when they got it, in order to buy something tangible, something that couldn't be taken away from them, like their money. So unfortunately, we have the habit of buying stuff that has no appreciating value just so our cash money won't be taken away. Well,